For those of you that don't know me, because somebody's in the chats like, "Hey, Gabe, how are you? Where are you from?" So, been friends with Rod, I think now 3 years. We connected via Encounter Ministries with Bishop Alan DiDio, and we're both musicians. We both love the word. Rod is certainly more of an apologist than I am, but I am one of those crazy, charismatic, messianic, Pentecostal, Baptist, Presbyterian people that just love the word and love to study all aspects of all things concerning the word of God. So, and like I said, the music thing. So we have fantastic conversations on and off the air. Oh, and Nick had a very funny question for Ian. He wanted to know if there was any protests on your campus.
Yeah,
that's a good way to get expelled.
Big protests here.
Big protests. The cessationists trying to take over your school, declaring the word of faith to be that prosperity nonsense.
Right.
all
that heresy.
Yeah, it's all that new thought. That's where Kenneth Hagin got all this stuff. They just keep on repeating the same old shtick.
The same old shtick. They produce whole documentaries based on bad information that can be debunked in a 2-minute Google search.
But we don't want to Google search an opposing view.
No, you don't want to see what E.W. Kenyon's own family had to say about the matter.
Oh yeah. Drop. You know what? Actually, I don't know if I've heard this with all the things I've seen abroad. So what did his family have to say about it?
Well, let me see if I can send a link in the private chat. Just give me a second.
Oh, just give us the cliff notes. It's the internet.
Well, basically, Kenneth Hagin never plagiarized Kenyon.
Well, that's a fact. But if we just went around actually telling people that, like, Justin Peters would have nothing to make videos about and nothing to make conferences about.
No, he'd just have to wait until Word of Faith ministers died and then make videos about how what they preached obviously didn't work for them.
Unifield wants to know, what are your thoughts on the new IFB King James only crowd? IFB King James only crowd? Is that supposed to be King James only crowd?
Fundamental Baptist? Is that what that is?
Maybe, I guess. Yeah, he's still at Rainbow. Well, you just said you're working with the ministry, not necessarily with the school, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, we're all under one umbrella ministry, but yeah, I don't.
You wanted to know how to reach you, so I forgot I can put the chat up here because I'm using my we're going through Restream, so I've got the option to do this. So what would be the best way to hit you up? Through Instagram, Facebook?
Yeah, Instagram or Facebook Messenger. At _Ian Brown on Instagram. Just send me a direct message.
There you go. So send him a direct message so you can reach out to him. Rod, I think this is more a question for you before we get to, are you with us now?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You're delayed, but hopefully that'll resolve itself here in a second.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on the new, is there a new independent fundamental Baptist King James only crowd? I didn't know that was a new thing. Or is there a new version of it? Do you know what Unifield is talking about?
Mm-mm.
No? I mean, I know of the King James only crowd. I know of independent fundamental Baptists, though I don't know. They're not really a unified front, seeing as they're independent. Because almost every Baptist church I go to, even those that are in the SBC, are a little different from each other. I mean, you have them from Rick Warner all the way over to guys that are basically a half a step away from being Reformed. So. Oh yeah, that's what we're gonna get into tonight, Owen, is the Mike Winger, Benny Hinn, Michael Brown thing. So Rod, kick us off.
No, well. Yeah, this I guess I don't know if Mike Winger had any history of doing Benny Hinn videos or not, but he's got a history of doing videos exposing or critiquing charismatics. He started off with Bill Johnson at Bethel, and then he started focusing on Brian Simmons, the guy behind the Passion Translation. And I didn't respond to anything he said about Bill Johnson because, for all I knew at the time, this is like 3 or 4 years ago, for all I knew, he was right. I hadn't done much research on Bethel and Bill Johnson. And when I first heard his expose on the Passion Translation, Brian Simmons, I didn't know anything about the Passion Translation, so I assumed that he knew what he was talking about. And then I started digging into it a little bit and found out that he was misrepresenting some things. So I did a rebuttal. I spoke with Winger first before I did my rebuttal, and I told him that I was going to respond. And we had a good conversation that at times got a little bit contentious. Anyway, I went ahead and did a 2-part series responding on the Passion Translation. And then he did a video critiquing a Joel Osteen sermon. And I thought,
didn't he do several of those? Because he was getting strikes from Lakewood because he was taking the entire sermon.
Yeah, he admitted that he took over 90% of the sermon and used it in his critique and his commentary, which you can't do that. I mean, it may, as long as you're doing an analysis and a critique, it may not qualify as what do they call that? When you public domain,
fair use.
Fair use. Thank you. Yeah, it may not qualify legally as a fair use violation, but as far as YouTube's guidelines, it does. YouTube is always going to side with the content owner. Yeah, pretty much, unless it's well within the guidelines. And I think he learned his lesson, because on the Benny Hinn thing, he showed very little of Benny Hinn, whereas with Joel Osteen, he just went on and on and on playing the stuff. And so anyway, with the Joel Osteen thing, the video, first he was just losing his revenues. The revenues went to Joel Osteen because he was a content owner. And then when he disputed it, and anybody who does YouTube understands this, usually, that when you use somebody else's content and there is a what they call a dispute, what's that?
A dispute or a claim,
a claim, a copyright claim. That's triggered automatically when you put the settings in YouTube that says that this is my content, and if other people use it, I get the revenues for it. Okay, and so the algorithm automatically will catch that and divert the revenues to the content owner. At that point, if you dispute it, that notifies the content owner. Otherwise, they probably won't even notice. You know, because especially if they've got 3.5 million subscribers like Joel Osteen does. So, but when you dispute it, then they get a notification that your copyright claim has been disputed. So that's when they look at it and say whether or not they think that it's a legitimate dispute. Mm-hmm. So when that happened, he just notified, basically by disputing it, he notified Joel Osteen's team. He seemed to think that Joel Osteen was sitting there at his computer saying, "Oh, I can't have this," and and
hilarious.
and I'm like, dude, he's got a team handling this. He probably never even heard about it. Yeah. But anyway, he said, Joel Osteen's trying to stop me from criticizing. No, you notified him when you disputed it, and that got their attention. And then they looked at it and they said, well, he's using 95% of the sermon. You can't do that. And they had it taken down. So anyway, there was that one, and then there was another video, and I responded on both of those. And then there was the what's the book, The Physics of Heaven. He did a video on the physics of heaven.
Oh yeah.
And I caught him misquoting one of the authors of The Physics of Heaven. And I mean, he took the first part of the quote out, which completely changed the meaning of what they were saying. And so I read the whole thing in my video to show you how he changed the context on it. And then he left a comment on my video saying, you took me out of context. What do you mean I took you out of context? I gave the whole quote. That's all I did was just
you took him out of context, taking the book out of context.
Contextception. It's like when the government says, "Hey, you were stealing from us."
Yeah, that kind of thing, or like when Bill Gates stole from Apple, and then Steve Jobs said, "You stole our stuff," and he said, "You mean I stole the stuff that you stole from Xerox?" Anyway, that's a little inside tech humor there. Anyway, so I had that little incident on the physics of heaven. Naturally, the physics of heaven was very controversial, and it was hyper-charismatics associated with Bill Johnson, apparently. And then now this on Benny Hinn. So it's always charismatics that he does it. He's never done any expose or critique of John MacArthur or John Piper or Voddie Baucham or Paul Washer or Justin Peters. None of that. And I said, isn't it interesting? Because he claims he's not a Calvinist and he claims he's a charismatic. But why are all of these critiques geared toward charismatics? So that's my background with Mike Winger on these things. Doesn't mean that his criticism of Benny Hinn is unwarranted, but it does mean that he has a tendency to critique people from one camp and not critique people from another camp. And there is plenty to critique John MacArthur on. I mean, the man said you could take the mark of the beast and still be saved. And he kicked a woman out of his church because she wouldn't reunite with her abusive husband. And that got written up. What's that?
Who then went to jail?
Yeah, he eventually ended up in prison for child abuse or molestation or something. I don't know. Anyway,
PTSD isn't real either.
Oh yeah, that's making the rounds right now. Mental disease is made up.
Right, that's the latest. But he had a track record before this. So,
hold up, we got a dissenter in the comments that's saying so. Larry V Man says Mike Winger is right on. Yup, many false healings and prophecies. Are you talking about Benny Hinn specifically, or just in general?
Larry V Man has good.
Benny.
Go ahead, Rod.
Larry V Man has good taste in guitars. That Larry V is a Canadian acoustic guitar. Very nice guitars.
Fellow
he has good taste in guitars, but he has lousy taste in apologetics.
He's a troll.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're curious, Larry V Man. Do you mean Benny Hinn in general, or you just mean you agree with so many so-called prophets, apostles are teaching unbiblical doctrine? That's a heck of a broad statement, my man.
But that goes back to what Rod was just talking about. People like MacArthur. I mean, we could just as easily say the same thing, that MacArthur's extreme cessationism is unbiblical, and yet Mike Winger has never made a 4-hour expose on him.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, because there are people. There's a handful of people that have said that these people that, and this is the dangerous thing, which is why we should be so careful as to who we call apostates and false prophets in this. Because here's the funny thing, like you have the MacArthur reform camp calling anybody and everybody that speaks in tongues and believes the gifts are continued, that are laying hands on seeing miracles happen. They're saying that they're doing that under the power of the devil, right? Which would they say you're blaspheming the Holy Spirit because you're attributing things to him that are not him. But the same can be said, and I've seen people on our side of the fence look at them and say the same thing. Like, you are attributing the works of God to the devil, so you're actually blaspheming the Holy Spirit. So it's the Spider-Man meme where everybody's just pointing at each other, and it's ridiculous, you know. And honestly, Larry V, man, I don't know you. I don't know the guitars, but I trust Rod's taste. So you know, my brother's bassist, so much love on the guitar taste. But yeah, I'm grow weary. It's like Nazi or racist. I'm about fed to the teeth, and now when somebody says, "Oh, he's teaching false doctrine," I just roll my eyes and be like, "Yeah, whatever, whatever." I mean, unless it's somebody in drag in a pulpit in a church, I just roll my eyes at this point, because we've overused it to the point where these words are losing their meaning. Your thoughts, Ian?
No, I pretty much agree with you. And Larry V says, not a MacArthur fan. So,
Interesting.
Hey, if you're consistent, then that's fine. I don't have a problem with you. I have a problem with people who are wildly inconsistent about these things, claiming that they're a charismatic and they're continuationists and they believe in the gifts of the Holy Spirit operating today. And yet they're courting an audience of people who believe otherwise.
Yeah. Rod?
Well, anyway, I just wanted to give a little review of Mike Winger's history doing videos on charismatics before I proceeded into my next thought, because there are things, and Gabriel, you and I have talked, there are things about Benny Hinn that drive me up the wall.
He's an easy target, man.
Right.
He's an easy target, you know. I mean, like it's like beating what is it? Beating a puppy with it's something the Joker says in a movie. Oh, it cracks me up. Oh, it's like beating a puppy with a kitten. That's what he says. You know. It's pretty sadistic, but also very funny. You know, it's a pretty funny visual. You know,
not into that, man.
Yeah, he's an easy target. So,
yeah, but I know a little bit about Benny Hinn, his background and so forth, because back in the 20th century, I went to Calvary Assembly in Orlando for a couple of years, 88 to 90. And Calvary Assembly is the church that kind of launched Benny Hinn. He used to be on staff there. We found out the other day. I didn't know he was on staff, but I knew he conducted healing crusades there at Calvary Assembly back in the late 70s, early 80s, and actually married the pastor's daughter, Suzanne Harthern. Her dad was Roy Harthern, the pastor of Calvary Assembly. Now, I never met Roy Harthern, but I did know Alex Clattenburg, and Alex Clattenburg succeeded Roy Harthern as the pastor of that church. And Alex was married to the daughter of my Assembly of God pastor. That's how I knew him. And but I knew a lot of people there at Calvary Assembly who knew Benny Hinn, because they went way back with him into the 70s when he was young, in his 20s, and launching out into ministry. I actually met the guy who was the head of his security team. And he told me stories about traveling with Benny Hinn. And I never met anybody who actually knew Benny Hinn who would say that he was a fraud or a charlatan or a con man or anything like that. But they all agreed that he is kind of childish, irresponsible, unstable, flaky. They would use words like that to describe him. He's just kind of a loose cannon, and he'll start something and then not follow through on it. And that's just his personality. And he's always been that way. And a few years ago, when Benny Hinn said that he was repenting the prosperity gospel, and he was going to have all of these money-raising videos removed from his server so that people would never see him saying he sent $1,000. Now, he said he was going to have all that
money back.
Right. But he didn't.
Probably.
He did make that pledge. He made the pledge that he was going to have all that content removed from his server. And these videos kept coming out of him saying, send $1,000 or whatever. And so somebody made a video saying, see, Benny Hinn said he was repenting and he wasn't going to do that anymore. And he just did it again. And I said, you don't understand, that content is generated automatically by the software on the server. It's just pulling up old content and spitting it out. And I said, he's not actually doing new videos. It's just pulling up old content. The problem wasn't that he said he wasn't going to do it and then he kept on doing it. The problem was he said he was going to have all that stuff removed from the server and he didn't follow through on it. And so the server software is still kicking out that old content. People told me I didn't know what I was talking about or whatever, but I said, just look at the video. He's got silver hair in that video. His hair now is white. Those videos are from years ago. Well, now he has actually done exactly what he was accused of. He's actually done new videos saying send $1,000 or whatever. So now it would be a legitimate criticism, but at the time it wasn't. But I mean, this is what you get with Benny Hinn. He says one thing and then he does another. And he might have good intentions, but then circumstances change and he changes his mind. And he's always been that way.
Yeah.
He started a church there in Orlando called Orlando Christian Center in 1982. And a lot of people followed Benny Hinn because by this time he was very well known. They followed him over to his new church, Orlando Christian Center. We called it OCC. And I mean, those people were there to see Benny. They weren't there because they had a great youth program or a great music program. They were there because of Benny. Well, as Benny started traveling and doing healing crusades, there was more and more demand for him around the world. He started going to all these different continents and having these big crusades, and he wasn't there at his church anymore. And he eventually just told his church, I don't have time to pastor. I'm too busy with my crusades. So they had associate pastors and guest speakers and everything. They tried to keep it going, but eventually the congregation just dwindled down to nothing. And he eventually fully resigned and had somebody else take it over, and they couldn't keep the crowds coming because they were there to see Benny and they weren't there to see Joe Blow, associate pastor.
Yeah.
So the congregation, it was like a 3,000, 4,000 member church, and it dwindled down to less than 1,000, and they couldn't keep the thing up. And so they just sold it and kind of merged the congregation with another new church. Is it Clint Brown?
Yes.
The guy that used to be on staff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. He started it.
Orlando, and a lot of people went over there.
Yeah, he started a new church in Orlando. They needed a new facility, so they sold it to them and just kind of merged the congregations. Meanwhile, Benny's off doing his big healing crusades. But it just always struck me as odd. You went there and you started that church, and all those people followed you over there, and then you just bailed on them when you got busy doing this other stuff. But that's Benny, and people who know Benny know he's like that. And so a lot of what happens with Benny Hinn is just a result of his personality, and he just doesn't follow through on things. He's never really understood, I think, the seriousness of being, consistent and having some sort of confidence that what you say you're going to follow through on. And and it's not just his policies, his programs, or whatever. It's also his doctrine. He'll get up and teach something, and then people will say, "Well, Benny, that's heresy." So he'll go, "Oh, it is." And so he'll get out the next week and say, "Forget what I said last week. It was a dumb thing to say."
That reminds me of a story. That reminds me of a story my one of my mentors told me. Bill Cloud, who he leads the the fellowship in Cleveland, Tennessee, the Messianic Fellowship, Jacob's tent. He told me, there was a service and somebody had a message in tongues, and somebody went up to translate and said, "Behold, I know you are afraid. Lo, I am afraid. Thus saith the Lord, I have made a mistake." Let me tell you, there is no better defense for what cessationists believe. I mean, this is why I'm so, I joke, but I'm like, yeah, I get it, guys. I get it. You guys have we give you so much ammunition to say, you know what, just stop it. Just cut it out. Just cut it out. It's silly.
Well, now a lot of the criticism is geared toward things that he has said prophetically. He said one time that Fidel Castro was going to die in the 90s.
The Lord, that was a mistake.
Oh, okay. I'm having an audio glitch here, I think.
Oh, you're good. You're coming in and out of phase, but don't worry about it. Keep going.
Okay, sorry. So anyway, he said Fidel Castro would die in the 90s. And of course, Fidel Castro didn't die until he was in his 90s.
He just got the wires crossed on that one.
Right. He just forgot the personal pronoun, or the pronoun his. Anyway, but yeah, he got that wrong. He said God was going to destroy the homosexual community, and that didn't happen. Just a lot of stuff like that. And so in this recent apology interview with Stephen Strang, he said, yeah, I've missed it on some things, in the area of personal prophecy. But he says, but nobody's perfect, and, I'll probably do it again. And this just drives me up the wall. I mean,
you are blessing CU. I think he would just be happy if you just did the rest of this part of the live stream in Benny voice.
Brother, I would wear myself out. Anyway,
I'll probably mess it up again. That's funny.
I can only roll my tongue so much. Anyway, I just, I listened to him say, nobody's perfect. And I thought, all right, now what if your kid took $50 out of your wallet and you confronted him and he said, yeah, I took the $50. I'm sorry about that. But hey, nobody's perfect. And I'll probably do it again. What would your response be? Would you say, well, he's got a point. Nobody's perfect. Or would you get upset and say, no, it's not going to happen again. I'm going to watch you like a hawk. I'm not going to trust you with anything. That would probably be closer to your response. But Benny, this is this cavalier attitude that he's had, where he can teach something and then flip-flop and teach something completely different. He can say one thing and then do another. He can start a project and not follow through on it. And now here he is in his 70s, and he's got to deal with the consequences of all this. And people should have held him accountable on this long ago. But, we, for some reason in the charismatic movement, we don't want to touch God's anointed or whatever. And if we did a better job of holding our own accountable, then these things wouldn't get to the point where they are now. The Trump prophets, that should have never happened.
Yeah.
That lady with the pink hair, man. Oof.
And I believe in prophecy. I'm a charismatic.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, Paul said, above all, I want you to prophesy.
Mm-hmm. But it's got to be judged, and you got to hold people accountable. And so that's why I signed the prophetic standard statement when that came out a couple of years ago, because I felt like, it's time somebody took the initiative, and Dr. Brown and Joe Matera wrote that thing, and it wasn't perfect, but I'm not going to be nitpicky and say, well, change that part and then I'll sign it. I just went ahead and signed it because I think we need accountability in the charismatic movement. It's sad that it's come to this with Benny Hinn. At the last few years of ministry that he has are going to be, clouded in this controversy. Just like John MacArthur is coming up to the end of the road in his life and ministry, and he's dealing with controversy because no one ever wanted to hold John MacArthur accountable.
Yeah.
It doesn't just work that way with charismatics. It works that way with non-charismatics too.
Yeah, he's had a lot of foul tips over the last few years, and nobody wants to say anything because he's John MacArthur. But buddy, ain't nobody got no trouble. If you're of a different tribe of the church, man, they'll call you out in a heartbeat.
Yeah. So anyway, that's all I have at this point on that. I'm probably going to comment more on it in the future.
Well, I think you should definitely bring up the thing about like Dr. Brown's response, especially concerning, Mike Winger says he's a charismatic. He says he's a part of Calvary Chapel, but even that's kind of
Well, the thing is, Winger. Calvary Chapel has this long policy going back to the days of Lonnie Frisbee, who, if you saw the movie Jesus Revolution, Lonnie was the young hippie preacher. Lonnie was operating in gifts of the Spirit, and I wasn't there, but people that I've talked to who saw his ministry, I did an interview with a couple of guys a while back who were part of the Jesus movement. And he was pretty amazing when he would minister healing and prophetic words and words of knowledge and stuff like that. But anyway, he was young and he was immature, and he let it go to his head, apparently, and it caused a rift between him and Chuck Smith there at Calvary Chapel. And eventually they had a parting of the ways. And eventually, because they were a charismatic church at one time, but they saw some of the potential downside and extremes and so forth, they eventually kind of shifted more toward a middle of the road policy. And that's what they have today. They say, well, we're continuationists, but we don't do the gifts in our church services. If you want to speak in tongues, you want to lay hands on the sick, if you want to do this, you want to do that, do it in private somewhere else. Because when we have people who aren't of that persuasion coming into our church, we don't want to run them off. So they have this very middle of the road approach, and that's their business, that's their church and their policy. But when you say I'm a charismatic and you define tongues the way that Mike Winger does as languages, like Acts chapter 2, and you don't recognize tongues as a prayer language, then to me, you're not a charismatic. You may be a continuationist, but you're not a charismatic. So I try to let people know when Winger pulls the charismatic card, I want people to understand where he's coming from on that. I've been a charismatic for over 40 years, and the vast majority of charismatics don't define tongues the way that Winger does. So
two quick questions. Oh wait, were you done on that point, or did you?
No, go ahead.
Was Lonnie actually gay?
I certainly don't know.
I don't remember, to be honest with you. I know he out there stuff, then repented, then got into his stuff, and then repented, and I don't really know like the deep dive on.
I don't think it's disputed that he participated in that lifestyle at one point. Whether that was just dropping LSD all the time, or if he was actually gay, I don't know. But I mean, I feel like it's been pretty well attested that he was in that for a time. I don't know if he ever went back to it after ministry or not, but
well, he was married, but of course that doesn't mean gay. But it would fit the narrative of the pro Lonnie crowd that no, he wasn't gay, but he went through a spell, like Ian mentioned, where he was experimenting with a lot of things. He got away from God, and he just started messing around with drugs and exploring different sexual orientations. And then he repented of it and he came back. So it wasn't like he was always gay. It was just a phase that he went through or whatever. That's what the pro Lonnie crowd, other people say, no, he he was part of the whole gay scene. I don't know.
Well, he was only born this way some of the time.
Right.
But
the whole thing, the point that I was trying to make was when you hear, because Hank Hanegraaff did the same thing. Hank Hanegraaff wrote the book Against the Word of Faith Movement, Christianity in Crisis, and he was a member of Calvary Chapel, and he used to play the charismatic card. Hey, I can criticize charismatics. I am a charismatic, but you have to consider where he's coming from as a so-called charismatic from Calvary Chapel. It doesn't mean the same thing as saying I'm a charismatic when you go to Bethel or when you go to let's say an Assembly of God church
or Church of God of Cleveland.
Which would be more classically Pentecostal,
yes,
than charismatic,
right? So,
which
but
I've never really seen the difference between the two. Like, I don't see a delineation between the two, to be honest with you.
Well, I think maybe this is the delineation, this like the position on speaking in tongues. I think that could be the major
evidence, being the initial evidence.
Being the initial evidence, being the initial evidence versus being a gift that some people operate in sometimes along with an interpretation. Because like the classic Pentecostal position is speaking in tongues is the initial evidence that accompanies baptism in the Holy Spirit.
What was that? What's that prophet guy, the black rapper pastor guy that does a lot of, like, almost all of his videos in the car, that he was stirring up a big stink about that. Like, you know,
talking about
like
Marcus Rogers.
Yeah, that's him. Wasn't he talking about that a few like 6 weeks ago or something like that?
He's UPC. He's United Pentecostal, or is he United Pentecostal?
Is that a Unitarian denomination?
Well, they wouldn't call themselves. They would call themselves Oneness Pentecostals.
No,
because if you use the term Unitarian, that's like Unitarian Universalist, and that's a whole different thing. They're talking, you know. Yeah. I made that mistake one time. I called them Unitarian. They said, we're not one Unitarian, we're Oneness Pentecostal, because Unitarian is they're more what do they call it, pantheistic.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a what do you call a progressivist denomination.
I do wonder if relabeling would help in this matter. Just, I don't know, to call groups like Rhema and Bethel something like neo-Pentecostal maybe. Because all these charismatics from Mike Winger, the Calvary Chapel crowd, the Remnant Radio guys, they all claim the label charismatics.
Mm-hmm.
And yet they go after charismatics with a baseball bat and they hit the cessationists with a feather.
Right.
I don't even think they swing the feather at them. You know, like where's the video going to be for John MacArthur saying mental illness doesn't exist? Where's those videos going to be next week?
Mm-hmm.
You ain't gonna see him. You ain't gonna see Mike Winger make no video about that.
Right.
You know,
yeah.
I mean, on Honest Youth Pastor, I don't even think Honest Youth Pastor, I think he posted it, but he didn't. I don't even think he commented. I think he just reposted it, just be like, hey, here's something that people are talking about, but I don't have an opinion, you know, because I'm too busy building my next 4-hour documentary on Stephen Furtick or Michael Todd.
Well, they're not going to admit this, but I'll say it. The online theological community is predominantly cessationist and leaning reformed. It leans reformed cessationist, because the charismatics online, they're not listening to people talk about theology. They're watching sermons from their Pentecostal charismatic pastors. They don't really have that same attraction to theology that the cessationist reformed crowd does. So if you're an apologist, if you've got a program where you talk about theology, it's just basic marketing. You got to know your market. Your market is going to lean that direction. So that's the direction that they go. And that's why they're not going to talk about MacArthur and Piper and the Reformed guys, because they're going to get a lot of pushback. But when you talk about the charismatic guys, the flaky, out of control charismatic guys, you're not going to get that much pushback because your crowd's behind you, right? Mm-hmm. So if you were all of a sudden to switch the dynamics and say, okay, the vast majority of the online theological community are charismatic and continuationist, and they're Benny Hinn fans, Joel Osteen fans, or Kenneth Copeland fans, then I think that you would see the content completely flip, because that's your market now.
Yeah,
I mean, it won't happen, but I'm just saying it's market driven.
And we might see that shift with what Daniel Kalinda's trying to do, and what you've been trying to do here for years as well. I want to take a quick pause, because Kentucky Girl asked this question twice, and I don't want to leave her in the dust. Did Calvary Chapel kick J.D. Farag or Farag? I don't know how out, or did he leave? I don't know who that is. You know who that is they're talking about?
No.
Ian?
I haven't heard. I'm Googling his name right now. Oh, he's from my neck of the woods. Different island, but he's from Hawaii. Pastor of Calvary Chapel, Kaneohe.
I
haven't heard about this.
Unfamiliar. We're going to have to research that Kentucky Girl and get back to you. I don't really keep up. Calvary Chapel is such a small. I mean, are they even enough to be a denomination?
I think they're considered a denomination.
Yeah, but they're small. Yeah. I mean, they don't have a whole lot of fellowships worldwide.
Mostly out on the west coast, I would think.
Similar to Vineyard.
Doesn't the Vineyard? John Wimber was associated, right, with Calvary
at one time.
Yeah.
J.D. Farad does prophetic update videos. Well, if he's doing that, they probably would have had a falling out, because that's not their. From what and it's funny, because I was actually, and I was telling Larry V Man. I'm trying to. I don't know if Larry V Man is still up here. Larry V Man, sound off in the comments if you're still here. He asked if somebody did Arnold, so if he's still here, I'll do this next thing in my Arnold voice. Since we got Benny up in here, we'll have to Ian. We'll have to find a voice that you do and do.
Well, I figure something out.
One Friday night, just in voices, but that Calvary Chapel fellowship that I led music in, was actually quite charismatic, and it was funny because I didn't really know much of their background, and I went and looked, and I'm like, oh, okay, it's Chuck Smith, and Chuck Missler was associated with them. I was like, well, maybe charismatic light, because they're like, Chuck Missler's not. I mean, if you watch his stuff, you would just sit him over there like he's Presbyterian, right? He'd fit in like right next to on a panel with R.C. Sproul, right? But the pastor was he was on the line of being prophetic, but he was very charismatic. So it was wonderful time, beautiful time serving there. But I went in there with the understanding like this is probably not what it's going to be, and it ended up being quite different. J.D. Farag had a demon manifest in a service. Hold up, so I'll pull it up so you guys can see. In a service not long ago, I wonder if that caused the problem. A demon manifested in your service. We're kicking you out of the church. Does that make any sense to anybody?
We're not kicking the demon out of you.
Yeah, we're not kicking the demon out of you. We're kicking you out of the church.
The church.
That actually would make sense for the modern church today. No, listen, we can't offend the demons, okay? You're being a bigot. We need to be accepting, and you need to get out of the church. Because no judgment, because in the book of Tupac, chapter 1, verse 2, it says only God can judge.
We welcome all entities at our church. Good and bad. We don't judge.
Oh, that was good.
Can we talk about John Moore's comment for a second?
Which one? Oh, this one? The Word of Faith?
Yeah.
Faith came from the charismatic movement. It is a movement from a movement. Charismatics will hard time word of faith as much as anyone else will have a hard time.
We'll have,
or
probably.
I'm guessing. Word of faith teaching on healing is one point of division.
I agree with that last part. I've met a lot of charismatics that have a hard time with word of faith particulars.
I had a conversation with some folks that are in our music program at the church that I serve at that were, when I quoted scripture, they're like, well, that's that word of faith. I'm like, the scripture that I quoted?
That's just that Jesus said that.
I mean, like, that's the word of God. I didn't say that. That's not my opinion. That's the word of God. That's word of faith.
Yeah, people act like Kenneth Hagin wrote Mark 11, 22, 23, and 24.
That's right. We got to cut that out, like the last 13 verses of Mark, because Jesus didn't really say that.
I'm not totally sure about the first part of this comment, though, that the word of faith came from the charismatic movement. And I'd like to get Rod's thoughts on that. Because the way I understand it, Kenneth Hagin was preaching the word of faith long before the charismatic renewal started breaking out in the mainline denominations.
Oh, right. Yeah. He started his traveling teaching ministry in 1949. And he was with the Assemblies of God. And he remained with the Assemblies of God until around 1970. And he was not well known outside of the Assemblies of God, which is a Pentecostal denomination. Now, the movement really took off after Kenneth Copeland started popularizing, I think, the movement. And he was never, I don't think he was ever Assembly of God. So it's kind of yes and no. Kenneth Hagin was definitely Pentecostal. He was an Assembly of God minister for 30 years. But the guys who really made it popular, Kenneth Copeland, Norval Hayes, Charles Capps, Jerry Savelle, Fred Price. Fred Price at one time was, I think, with the Church of the Foursquare Gospel before he came into Word of Faith. So a lot of the guys that popularized it came from different backgrounds. But the main guy, Kenneth Hagin, was definitely Pentecostal. And the popularity grew as people in the charismatic movement who came from all kinds of backgrounds, hippies getting saved in the Jesus movement, people leaving the Baptist church, Methodist church, or just new converts from whatever. All these people started coming into the movement that did not have a Pentecostal background, and it took on a real charismatic flavor. But the roots are definitely in Pentecostalism.
Yeah, that's been my impression being here at Rhema and having such close ties with the ministry. I mean, Kenneth W. Hagin and Lynette Hagin, they were associate pastors for her dad's Assemblies of God church in Texas for a number of years.
Right.
So in Rhema proper, we're very much neo-Pentecostal, I would say. Like, the doctrine it's nothing. Our statement of faith is nearly word for word the statement of faith from the Assemblies of God. We just have an emphasis on divine healing and positive confession.
Yeah. But the thing was, Kenneth Hagin was not a televangelist. He was rarely on television. And I think a lot of the growth in the movement came from the televangelists. Copeland, man, you couldn't turn on Christian television 30, 40 years ago without seeing Kenneth Copeland and Fred Price. They were just everywhere. Yeah.
And I think that might be the kind of stink in people's mouths, because when you had what's the guy that your friend who was on our phone calls that he worked for his ministry, the Putin preacher.
The Putin preacher.
The Putin preacher.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Vladimir Putin. You're talking about Robert Tilton.
Vladimir Putin. Yeah, come on.
Okay, you're doing Arnold for a Russian accent. That doesn't work.
Yes, I'm going to do Austrian for the Russian. If he dies, he dies. What in the world is something with the T? What in the? I can see him. You know who I'm talking about? The Kevin, the guy the ministry that Kevin worked for, the big guy that he was always asking for money and got in big trouble. And
Robert Tilton.
Yeah, Robert Tilton, come on, send me your money. Send me your money, get a miracle. Come on, right now. You can do it. Come on.
I met him.
Bless me. I'm here. Heal me. I'm here.
He didn't start out that way.
No, he didn't. He sure didn't. That was for you, Larry the Man. You know, that is for you. So that's blessed are the peacemakers, for they will speak like Arnold and be brothers. Yeah, that's how it goes. The book of Arnold, chapter 3, verse 9.
What's the other imitation that you do?
Oh, there's several. I got many in the bag that but
you did one a while back that cracked me up. I can't remember. It wasn't Arnold.
Oh,
well, your Arnold's good.
Yeah, my Arnold is good. The Arnold is good. And
not too many Dominicans are doing Arnold Schwarzenegger these days.
No, but there's a guy with a mustache on Instagram that's killing it, dude. He does like Arnold like perfect. It's flawless and it cracks me up. Anyway, we're here to talk about the word, not my impressions. Yeah, you rarely find such balanced teachers today. I'm guessing you're talking about Brother Hagin or maybe one of the other ones. Yeah. Charismatic doctrines evolved from Pentecostal denominations. You know, well, I mean, if you take it back to Azusa Street, I'd say that's pretty accurate, right? Would you disagree with that? I mean, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Obviously, the chicken came first. The chicken would have to be Pentecostalism.
Yeah, Pentecostalism definitely precedes the charismatic movement. And I don't think an Assemblies of God church would consider themselves part of the charismatic movement.
They're Pentecostal.
Because they're Pentecostal, right. So what's the difference? Right.
Well,
I feel like that should be defined.
I think some would, because especially the mega church, like the one in Springfield where they had the flap recently.
James River,
yeah, James River Church, which I never heard of that church until this thing was in the news. But yeah, that's definitely a charismatic style Assembly of God church.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Which one was that one? Was that the one that had the male stripper?
The Driscoll thing.
The Driscoll had to call out. I didn't realize, dude. I thought because I never really followed his ministry. I thought he was a Reformed guy.
He was.
Oh, okay. So I wasn't thinking wrong.
No, he came up in that young, restless, and Reformed era.
Right.
It was
that sounds like a TBN soap opera.
That's what they called it.
That's what they called it.
It was like it was Mark Driscoll, Matt Chandler, guys like that were all coming up at the same time. They were all gaining prominence and building large online followings. They called it the Young, Restless, and Reform movement.
Yeah,
dude, that's hilarious. I mean, it's hilarious that they called themselves that. Hold up. We have to go down a rabbit trail for just a few seconds. What is with congregations naming themselves such stupid things like that? What is churches? Churches, please hold up. I gotta do like the Jordan guy. I gotta zoom in. Churches, please stop with the action verb names. Please stop trying to make yourself cool. Let's go back to like Antioch and Ebenezer, or just like First whatever. First Methodist, First Baptist, First Pentecostal, First Charismatic, First Word of Faith, just something. Stop with this, the bitriculation church of the excitement and the moving of the things and where the going up to the high place. Actually, I'll take we're going up to the high places, because that's basically just it's a synonym for the church that I don't want to say because everybody picks on them. So I'm trying to not say that one. I guess nobody have a problem with the action verb names.
Nobody really wants to claim Mark Driscoll anymore. It's because he came from that Reformed world, but they don't want him. The Charismatics don't want him. It's just like the only people who really are into Mark Driscoll these days are the toxic masculinity guys.
The Driscollites.
The Driscollites.
Right. Yeah. Driscoll's got this thing about gotta be a man. Okay. Oh, that's the one that you do. That's the imitation you do is Jesse Ventura or Alex Jones. Yeah.
Oh, Alex Joe, hold up.
No.
No. Kind of retarded. Well, listen, you got to listen, brother. It's just, it's funny because like my Alex Jones goes in and out of Randy Savage because I really think he missed his calling as a preacher or being a commentator for the WWF. So listen, I'm just trying to tell you that there's Jezebel spirit going on, and we got all these weak Ahabs, and you need to get that testosterone. You need to put it in your body because you need to resist that spirit of Jezebel in your church, and you need to be able to bench press 500 pounds from the pulpit and preach the word and be in the spirit. Don't be like these secessionist pansies just out here picking on people on the being a bunch of cowards on the internet. You need to go out there. You need to do the work of the Lord. I'm kind of retarded.
Go to InfoWarsStore.com, buy the supplements.
No.
So you can be an Elijah.
You need to go to Infoword.com. I'm telling you right now, Infoword, and you need to get my. Yes, Sean, Hulk Hogan got saved again. Hulk Hogan got saved again. He backslid, and they're making the Teller's 100%. They're making the pastors gay.
They are in the UMC,
United Methodist Church. Pastors gay.
They're literally doing that in the United Methodist Church right
now. Rod, that's on you, Rod. But hold up. Unifield has asked this question twice. That's why I left it on the screen. What is a good defense for Christian contemporary music? I have none.
I feel like the best defense for Christian contemporary music would be for musicians to make good music.
Well, that wouldn't be a defense. That would be an attack. Like Jesus deserves more. I made a whole song and designed a T-shirt. So if you're looking for a defense for it, I really don't have one because the young people like it. I mean, the young people like it because that's all that's shoved down their throats. That's all they hear in church. If you want my unabashed, I mean, it's 11 o'clock my time and I'm talking with my two friends. So I'm just going to act like I'm not on the internet. But if you ask me, man, it's turned into a bunch of regurgitated, semi-spiritual, near erotic, feminized gobbledygook that half the time isn't about God. It's not even worship. Some of it is very, I'd say a small percentage is actually scripturally accurate. And of that part, of those ones that are scripturally accurate, most of those are appropriate for an altar service or to minister to the congregation, but they're not actually praise songs. They're not vertical worship songs. So I have no defense. If you're looking for one, you asked the wrong dude. So I don't know. Maybe Ian, maybe the young blood can help him out. I don't know if Rod's gonna have anything positive to say. Modern worship is turning all our kids gay.
Right. I can't tell you how jarring it is to be in a song service and go from our God is a mighty warrior to I want to sit at your feet and drink from the cup in your hand and lay against you and breathe and feel your heartbeat. I mean, there's definitely an appropriate time for a song like that, but it's just very jarring after going from we're going down to the enemy's camp and we're going to take back what the devil stole from us to go
sloppy wet kisses
into sloppy wet kisses.
Yeah, reckless sloppy wet kisses. That's what we're about right now. Sloppy
wet.
And
I think like context definitely determines the appropriateness of a song that is being used to direct a congregation in worship. But if you're meeting, like the Sunday gathering, your worship, your song service should be congregational songs that glorify God.
Yeah.
Like if you want to listen to something a little more intimate, in your prayer closet while you're just having time with the Lord, go for it. But when we gather together as the corporate body, we're there for a purpose, and it's not to make it about me and like feeling good in the presence of the Lord and like, what can I get out of this?
Yeah.
Like it's about lifting the name of Jesus high and doing that with our brothers and sisters in Christ. So I say bring back the congregational choruses that are easy to remember
Yeah.
So I'm not reading a book on the screen to keep up with the lyrics.
At a time. You know, I've told my media team to stop throwing. You know, the issue with this stuff is they'll throw, like exactly like you said, there's 3 or 4 verses, right? And it's not like the stanzas, because they won't sing them the same. They'll do all these ad libs. So what do you hear? They're actually training the congregation not to sing. So when they sing the verses, the congregation just stands there and goes into concert mode. And this is a corporate worship service, you know, and they're throwing and if they are wanting them to sing, they're throwing 2 lines on the screen. So I'm not singing. I'm looking at a screen, which has got video, which is, you know, showing the drummer doing his thing. You got camera guys on stage. And listen, man, praise the Lord for production and trying to share what the Lord is doing in a house of worship online to minister to people. But it gets to a point where is this a distraction? You know, are we what are we trying to do here? What's the poipus? What are we trying to accomplish here? And yeah, I agree with the Flames of the Spirit said no Kirk Franklin. Let me tell you, I feel like it's now almost every month I'm having people send me messages, and because listen, I grew up on his music when he wasn't famous, like when he wasn't this monolith thing in the Christian community, when he was just a black gospel artist, one of many. And even back then it was like, you know, he wrote the songs, he played keyboards, but he wasn't up there bouncing around. He was either conducting the choir or he was playing keys. And now you know, now he's up here breakdancing with you know, doing some moves that are suggestive. Some, you know, some of the videos people are just, they're stretching. But I'm like, dude, what are you doing? You're not singing. You're not playing. You're just up here looking like a 2-year-old. Just, I'm like, you're not Michael Jackson either. So, you know, at least listen. And this is what I literally said this to some friends of mine last week. 3 different friends and 2 different comment feeds. At least when Carmen did this, because Carmen wasn't this, you know, he wasn't Michael Jackson either, but he tried to do the whole dance and make things hip. We're trying to make Christianity cool, right? But when he did it, he didn't charge you $50, $100, $150, $200, $250, $300 for a ticket, and he always preached the gospel. Always. It wasn't about entertainment. It wasn't about making money, or you would have paid at the door, and he didn't. That's the difference. Michael Jackson worship music. Listen, if there was some Michael Jackson worship music, I'd listen to that. Lord, be a lot better than some of this nonsense we play today. Oh, I'm getting a little too honest now. Ooh. Rod, say something so I can shut up.
Well, you know, I'm a senior citizen, and hold on a second, I'm getting an echo. I have a very eclectic approach to music. I grew up singing traditional hymns in the Baptist church. A Mighty Fortress is Our God, written by Martin Luther. Charles Wesley's Christ the Lord is Risen Today.
You can sing songs from that Jew-hating Martin Luther. That's nowhere near that's nowhere near as bad as Benny Hinn.
Yeah, we left that part of the discussion out, didn't we?
We didn't even get to Michael.
We did leave
that
it.
Panel discussion. We can get back to that if you want.
Oh, that's a good segue to get right into it, because here, like, I agree with you. That's a powerful hymn.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah,
you know,
I sang the traditional stuff. I took 4 years of classical piano, so I have an appreciation for classical music. But then when I left the Baptist church and started going to an Assembly of God church, we're singing camp meeting songs. Jesus, hold my hand, and just a little while to stay here. And everybody's clapping, you know, on those old camp meeting songs. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was kind of cool. It was different. And then I come over to the Charismatic movement, and it's, I got to, you know, what was that song? Well, joy, 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 joy down in my heart. But there was another one.
Where?
Oh, yeah, that's it. Where down in my heart? Where? Yeah. And the joy of the Lord is my strength. That was another one I was thinking of. Back in the day, we used to sing songs like that in charismatic churches, just like Ian said, just choruses that everybody could join in and sing. And now most churches, the people aren't singing. They're just kind of standing there watching what's happening up on the platform. I don't mind different styles of music, but I do think you've I do think the lyrics are a problem. When you do the Jesus is my boyfriend thing, that's a little bit silly. And just because the song is popular out there in the concert milieu doesn't mean it's appropriate for a praise and worship part of the service.
100%. It's why we didn't sing Stephen Curtis Chapman songs in church.
Mhm.
They were on the radio and they were great
Right.
songs. This is the great
Yeah,
adventure.
we
It's
didn't
not
come
something-
in
Sing, gather up your horses. We
I
gotta
was
trail
just
the
going to say
blades.
that song, Ian. Saddle up your horses.
Whoa.
Wouldn't really be appropriate for a worship service. Yeah, that's weird how we zeroed in on that same song.
I blame what's his name in the comments that actually mentioned Stephen Curtis Chapman, said he still likes to listen to him, and I said, he's who knows? Yeah, but this actually I miss. Oh, there it is. JMD said it. Yeah, I still listen to most. I still listen to some Stephen Curtis Chapman, of course. Yeah, a lot of that. But like I said, a lot of that old stuff was written from a different place, and a lot of CCM nowadays is just what was popular in pop 2 years ago, but now it's for the Christians. Well, JMD, that used to be the case, but Christian music, especially church music, has not gone anywhere in about a decade. When Hillsong and Elevation came hard on the scene, following and copying Coldplay, we have stayed there. We have been there since 2008. We're coming up on 20 years of sitting on a merry-go-round, going in circles, and it's about to drive me crazy. It's about.
I was in youth group in the early aughts, and so I grew up on Hillsong United. And I actually went back to some of those early albums from like 04, 05, 06. And I was just struck just like how raw and authentic they were and how much it sounded like stadium rock and not overly produced Coldplay copycats. And yeah, it started off great. I still love those old albums. And then you get to like, 2014, 15, 16, and I'm like, this just sounds like everything else.
It's formulaic. It's formulaic fast food. And look, man, I like a Wendy burger every now and again. I don't want to eat a Wendy burger every day. I don't. It's not good for you. And I think, like you were saying, Rod, a variety. I mean, here's the funny thing. We want to have diverse congregations, but then we all expected to act the same and sing the same. And like, that's not diversity. That's not even unity and that makes no sense to me. Listen, we want blacks and Hispanics and Asians and whites and, people of all races and nations to come together and sing the way we sing. You're going to sing our songs. Like, the first time I led worship for a Spanish congregation, I was excited. I was like, oh my gosh, we're going to get to do merengue, bachata, salsa, sing coritos. No, we want to sing Hillsong in Spanish. I mean, dude, it was just like, I was so disappointed. So disappointed. But we do need to go down that rabbit trail real quick of the Martin Luther, Dr. Brown. It was
panel discussion
with Justin Peters. It really blew me away how he had to put them in the corner. I mean, literally just box them in with concrete walls to get them to admit, like, dude, tell me Benny Hinn has not said anything close to what this Joker said and what this Joker did. Like, not even in the same planetary, galaxy, not in the same solar system has Benny Hinn done anything close to what Martin Luther said or did. So expound, Rod.
Benny Hinn loves Israel. He grew up there. He loves the Jewish people. And unlike John Calvin, he never had anybody turned over to the authorities to be executed. And yet those guys are the champions of the Reformation, and they're still revered. And I understand that they did some good things theologically, and they turned the church more toward the Bible and justification by faith, and that's all a good thing. But they did some bad things too, much worse than what Benny Hinn has been accused of.
Big time.
But Benny Hinn is very popular and very much a very controversial figure today. Had these guys been around 500 years ago, maybe they would have focused on Calvin and Brown, Dr. Brown, that way. I don't know. But it was a very valid point for Michael Brown to make, that you say all these things about Benny Hinn, you wouldn't consider him a brother. And yet you wouldn't say that about Martin Luther. And these are and he read that, and some of those things that he was reading I had heard before, but most of them I hadn't.
Oh, they were crazy. I mean, that was crazy that man took the time to write that down to where he could be cited and quoted 400 or 500 years after the fact. that man, like, that dude's hate for the Jewish people was seething. Wow.
Is this?
I was really happy.
Oh, go ahead.
I was really happy to see that they had that panel discussion, because I didn't think Justin Peters would ever sit down and talk with charismatics. And I don't think he would have done it if he hadn't had Jim Osmond there with him, but as contentious as it got at times, I think it was a good thing. And hopefully, they can build on that dialogue that they had there, because early in the discussion, you had them coming after Benny Hinn and all the crazy things that charismatics do. And they were on their heels. Sam Storms and Dr. Brown were kind of on their heels, like, well, I don't know anything about that. Well, that doesn't, I don't think I could probably condone that, but I don't know anything about it. And then Dr. Brown flipped it, and then Justin Peters and Jim Osmond were on their heels trying to say, well, I never heard that about Martin Luther, but I'd have to. So it went back and forth like that, and that's what you expect from a good, honest discussion. So it had some. I mean, it annoyed me at times, but I think overall it was a good thing.
Yeah. Oh, big time. What were you gonna say? You were gonna say something, Ian?
I was just gonna ask if this is like an apocryphal legend, or is it actually true that Luther wanted to strip James out of the canon?
I don't know. Do you know anything about that, Rod?
Not really. I mean, I've read stuff that kind of indicates both ways. Not just James, but also the Book of Revelation. I don't know if he wanted to keep them out of the canon, or if he was just questioning what they were teaching, or I don't know the extent. I know he didn't like James and the Book of Revelation, but whether or not he tried to get them removed, I don't know. But the problem, of course, he had with James is James says we're justified by works. Wasn't Abraham, our father, justified by works when he offered his son Isaac? And you see then that you demonstrate your faith by your works, or whatever. I can't remember now. I used to have the whole book of James memorized, but I don't remember how he put it now. But basically what he's saying is that faith without works is dead, and you're not saved by faith alone, which he was countering the view that all you got to do is say, I believe in Jesus. And he's like, big deal. The demons believe, and tremble. But works is important. And so, and of course, Dr. Martin Luther was saying that we're justified by faith based on Romans. And so when he read that in James, he's like, well, James is teaching the opposite of what Paul taught in Romans. And so,
yep. Doesn't matter that his half brother, throw it out. It disagrees with me. Sounds like a reform guy. Hey, that makes sense. But Pentecostals are just as bad. I'm sorry. I'm not.
There's definitely a theological tension there, but theological tensions exist for you to dig deeper and resolve them. If you believe that the Word of God is inspired, then you shouldn't have these tensions existing. It's not a matter of saying, well, Paul was right or James was right. No, if it's all inspired, then they're both right, and you just got to dig a little to get to the deeper truth. I guess the issue with Martin Luther was he wasn't sure that James was inspired. But they settled that a millennium before Martin Luther came along.
Yeah. That is a fact. Yeah, that's what Nick says that Benny's too caught up in theatrics. He's a master.
Well, did we? There was a comment earlier. Was it from Ava? She said that before she knew Benny Hinn was a minister, she saw him on TV and thought he was a comic.
No kidding. Hold up. I missed that. I mean, the comments are flying in, so it's I don't know if I can find it.
Oh, this was this was a while back.
Way back. Yeah, I don't think I can find it. You serious, Ava?
I think that was Ava who said that.
That's crazy.
You know, when Steve Martin did his movie on I can't remember now what it was called.
Leap of Faith.
Leap of Faith. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
It was based on Benny Hinn. He actually went to a Benny Hinn service and watched him to do a little research.
Oh my gosh.
That's a great movie, by the way. Everyone should go watch it.
Well, I mean, dude, Steve Martin. Has he really made? He hasn't made many stinkers.
No. And that was his heyday when he made Leap of Faith. Like he was at the top of his game. I love the ending too, because I don't want to spoil it for anyone. I don't want to spoil like a 40-year-old movie for anyone.
Yeah.
But well, it's a great. It treats. It definitely takes its shots at like the faith healers and the televangelists. Like it doesn't pull back its punches, but it pays enough respect to the fact that miracles happen.
Yes.
And sometimes you'll see things that you can't explain that doesn't fit in your paradigm.
Yeah.
And it takes that very seriously, which is something I respect. So it's a great movie.
Yeah. Well, and I think that was something I was going to say earlier, Rod, with when we were talking about a lot of the Pentecostals and Charismatics were the ones that took over, that they saw, man, television is a way to preach the gospel. So I think there's this association with, if you preach this, if you preach God heals, if you preach the supernatural, well, you're after my money, because all those guys, the only people that preach that are the ones that are asking for money on the television. So I think there's this false connection between those two things that the world, I mean, like, dude, I mean, think of that. That stuff started in the 70s. So we've had, about 50 years of that where people just like, oh yeah, everybody that preaches that stuff, they're just out for your wallet. Because I mean, who are the biggest people on TV? Creflo, Copeland, Duplantis, and that's what they preach,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's Justin Peters. That seems to be his mindset, is that all faith healers are charlatans. They're all frauds. They're all after your money. And when Jerry Savelle passed away a few weeks ago, Justin Peters did a video on Jerry Savelle, and he showed the clip of Jerry Savelle getting into his Falcon 50, whatever, the plane that can fly internationally that he just purchased last year.
Yeah.
Didn't get to use it too long, but he shows him getting into the plane. He says, and there goes Jerry Savelle off to Africa to exploit the poor. Well, he has no evidence to base that on. That's just an assumption on his part, because Jerry Savelle teaches prosperity and he's been on TV. So he's got to be, exploiting people. That's his default position. He doesn't base it on evidence. It's just his default position that they're all frauds. They're all out to take your money, and they're all false teachers, false prophets, wolves in sheep's clothing, whatever. And if you're familiar with Jerry Savelle's ministry, you know that for years he has had a ministry for the poor in Africa. And he doesn't, I mean, who goes to Africa to make a lot of money?
Exactly.
They go to Africa and India and Latin America or wherever they go because that's the Great Commission, is to take the gospel to the ends of the earth. And they get money from the West, primarily the United States, to fund what they're doing. One guy did a video one time about Heidi Baker, who's in Mozambique in Africa. And he was talking about Heidi Baker's down there in Africa stealing money from all these people in Mozambique. And I'm like, if you took all their money, it wouldn't buy food to last you 1 year.
Yeah.
They don't have that much. She's down there ministering to them, but because she's charismatic, she gets accused of exploiting people. It's not based on facts. It's just based on, theological bigotry is what I call it.
Yeah. I actually wanted to address, there was one thing, there was something funny that Sean Treem said. He said one of the people were talking about, called them a turd, and I was like, is that a biblical term? And he's like, well, I was gonna use the A word. It's in the Bible, but I was like, hey, bro, it's in the King James, but I couldn't type it fast enough. Well, the King Jesus taught out the King James right there in the boat on the Sea of Galilee in 1612. By God. But that's kind of hard to type fast without you, and you can't put the inflection of the voice. But there's something that somebody put. Yeah, Dylan, you son of my brother. This is I wanted to speak to this. He said, that he saw firsthand miracles in Benny's crusades in Africa. Listen, and I think I've shared this before with you, Rod, possibly on a live stream. I know in our conversations. A friend of mine who's the most non-Pentecostal, I don't even know if he was filled with the Spirit, to be honest with you. He was a sound guy. He's a tech. He's a double, triple introvert. He went with a AV company to do cameras for a crusade that Benny was doing in Africa, with armed guards going up on warlord checkpoints with AK-47s and having to pay people off to get there. 100,000 people that came. And he said a lot of the people that were with the company that he was with were not saved. These were secular people that just had the wisdom, the know-how, the technology, and knew how to work with the equipment, right? He said those cameramen were falling out in the Spirit, filming, like while they were filming. Not saved. These are agnostic, atheist, non-believers that were falling out under the power of God. So I don't know what you want to do with that, but I think you might want to put it in your peace pipe and smoke it and think a little while, because this guy he hardly spoke. So for somebody to hardly speak and just tell you a tall tale, and if you could have seen this guy's eyes, I mean, he was almost terrified, because like I said, he was not one prone to, he's not the first one. He's not even the last one to run up to the altar. He's the one that's going to crouch in the booth so that he doesn't get called out when somebody's ministering in the prophetic. He's like, I'm going to hide or walk out the building because I don't want to get called out. That was this guy. So absolutely tremendous testimony. And, after reading some of Benny's books and stuff, and and even what I was saying about using Kenneth Copeland and Tilton and Duplantis, I challenged somebody. But Cap sent me a video the other day of Duplantis kind of doing some double talking. It was really bad. I mean, like it was.
I think I saw that clip. Yeah.
You saw that one that he used the script to call himself out.
Yeah,
but I'll tell you, I've listened to about half a dozen of his sermons. I heard nothing in there that anybody that's listening with the word would be like, can't argue with that. Sounds a little fantastical. It's a little dressed up. Plus, he's a character. But they bless me. They bless me incredibly. And you need that preaching. I love expositional preaching. We need the prophetic. We need the anointed. But man, you need to be encouraged too. And my God, how in the world how in the world, my Reformed brothers and sisters, are we supposed to build $100 million arks and museums without money? The funny thing is, the Reformed people operate in prosperity. They just don't teach it. Well, actually, hold up, Rod. Tell that quote the other day. Tell that quote you told me just yesterday. You got something, Ian, before him?
Well, before Rod does that, let me just plug my podcast, Bible School Podcast, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Audible, wherever you get your podcasts. The Bible School Podcast. A couple weeks ago, I did an episode comparing what Kenneth Hagin and John MacArthur have said about sowing and reaping and biblical prosperity. Spoiler alert, they're not that far off.
That's exactly what Rod's going to say. So he's going to give you a quote, and we're going to give you guys like 60 seconds. Rod, say this quote, and then I want y'all to guess who said it, Kenneth Hagin or Kenneth Copeland or John MacArthur.
Let's see. The world will tell you that if you want prosperity, hold on to everything, hoard it, accumulate it, save it, invest it. That's how to increase your riches and guarantee your future prosperity. But God has a different plan. When you talk about prosperity in God's terms, it is the opposite of what the world would suggest. And God does have a plan for financial prosperity. He really does. And it does not disregard hard work. It does not disregard saving. It does not disregard wise investment. But it does reject accumulation and hoarding. In fact, God's plan for prosperity calls for you to give your money away. That's right. Now, the passage before us in 2 Corinthians chapter 9 lays out the truth of what I have just said to you. And I warn you right now, it will challenge your faith. It really will. It will directly challenge your faith in an absolutely unavoidable and inescapable way. When I'm through this morning, you are going to have a measure of whether you really believe in the promise of God and the power of God. You're going to know your faith in God, your faith in His word is going to be on the line this morning. And it's going to be on the line every day after this, because you're going to learn what you're going to learn today. So I'm giving you fair warning in case you would like to leave before your accountability level goes up very high. There is clearly a path to financial prosperity, but it is contrary to everything the world says and everything that works in the natural realm. And so it demands that you follow it by faith. The path to financial prosperity is going to demand that you give away what you have. Now, in all honesty, this is not a new principle. In fact, it's a very old one. It has been repeated throughout Scripture. Maybe you missed it. Proverbs 19:17 says, "He who is gracious to a poor man lends to the Lord, and He will repay him for his good deed." He goes on and quotes other verses. This is John MacArthur in 1996.
Yeah.
Talking about there's a path to financial prosperity. He doesn't say when we all get to heaven, that's when we get our prosperity. No, he talks about a path to prosperity here in this world, this side of heaven.
Yeah,
now, he's even
going harder than you do, because you're like, there's a clip that we have from one of our conversations on soul vitamins where you're like, when he's talking about houses, he's like, you're going to go everywhere and you're going to have a house because there's going to be believers, brothers and sisters and mothers and family. You're going to go and you're going to have family of God. So he's even going harder in prosperity than you are.
He goes harder on it than I would too. If you listen to the podcast, you'll hear me play a clip from MacArthur from a sermon in the 90s or the early aughts, where he's talking about sowing and reaping. And he says that the seed that you sow reproduces after its kind. So if you sow finances, you get finances. You sow houses, you get houses. Just like if you sow oats, you get oats. If you sow barley, you get barley. He makes the comparison. He says that's stronger than I would.
Yeah.
But this was from a sermon in 96, and it was a two-part deal. And the second part is where he gets into criticizing the prosperity, what's called the prosperity gospel. And he gets into the exploitation and the excesses of emphasis on money. So I don't want to leave you thinking that this is all he had to say about it. He did have a biblical prosperity message, and then he countered that with what he considers unbiblical teaching on prosperity. And much of that I would agree with, that there have been error and extreme taught in the charismatic movement, word of faith movement, televangelists. Yeah, there's exploitation and abuses, but the idea that all that the Bible talks about prosperity is just talking about spiritual prosperity, is just talking about when we get to heaven, that's not what John MacArthur was teaching.
Yeah. But then they'll turn right around and say, well, we're talking, Jesus healed us spiritually. By his stripes we are spiritually healed.
Okay, yeah, tell that to Matthew when he quotes Isaiah 53 in the context of bodily physical healing, I think I'll stick with the apostle over.
Tell it to blind Bartimaeus.
Well, there's actually when the song "The Blessing" came out. You remember the?
We were joking about it instead, or rather, they were. My brother Jonathan, he was picking on me, which I love it because I own up to this. I told him, I was like, listen, man, it grinds my gears when that song is sung in a praise and worship service in the context of praise and worship. It's a benediction. It is literally the Aaronic benediction. Yes, it's straight scripture, 100%. But this was the conversation I had with Ron Canoli. It's like, okay, you sit down at a restaurant. Imagine going to a Mexican restaurant and they give you ice cream with chips. Does that make sense to you? You don't have your dessert before you eat your meal. That's what we're doing. We're having dessert at the beginning of the meal. So yeah, the blessing is, it's a benediction. You do it at the end of the service to bless the congregation because it has it's nothing about the Lord. The Lord bless you. The Lord keep you. The Lord face to shine upon you. Where are we blessing God in that? We're not blessing God at all. We're blessing the congregation. How is that a praise and worship song?
But there is prosperity in that.
Oh, 100%.
The point that I wanted to make was that when I was researching for the video that I did on the blessing, I came across a teaching, an article on the Ligonier website, which was R.C. Sproul, a Calvinist, right? And he was talking about the Aaronic blessing, and he said he lists what all that blessing was about, and it sounded like a prosperity preacher, the way that he was talking about the blessings that God had for his children, his covenant people. It includes children, money, bountiful harvests, protection from your enemies. All of these things were a part of that Aaronic blessing.
Yes.
And, if a charismatic had written that article, then people would say, well, that's just, that's that false word of faith prosperity gospel. But because it was R.C. Sproul, well, he's a scholar, but you just don't hear people quoting R.C. Sproul and John MacArthur on these things very often. And I think it's good to remind people that there's not that much difference when you get right down to it. There's not that much difference between what we believe.
Thank you. It's the truth. A quick side note. Apparently Nick Goss knows what's going on with that JD Farad video. And he says it was great. So apparently, I'm probably gonna have to go watch this as soon as the stream's over. Apparently, he cast that demon out immediately, went back to the podium, calmed himself down, and kept on preaching. That sounds like Lester Sumrall to me. You hush right now. You get out of this place. I'm preaching. Oh, and by the way, was it him or was it him it was him that told the devil to like straighten his room back? Like the demon messed up his room. And he told him, he cast him out and he said, hey, you come back here and you leave this room the way you found it. Was that him?
I want to say that was Wigglesworth.
Yeah, it was either him or Wigglesworth. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. It's one of the two. What's that? What's that about? What's that? I don't allow lies in my house. What did Rod... Oh, hold up. What's this? What did Rod sow and reap such architecture behind him? It's called AI, son. It's called AI.
That's Jew and Greek, right? That's the Parthenon and the temple.
We got to get Nick on one of these next ones, man. Nick's a fireball when it comes to this stuff because he loves the Lord and he embraces the family of God. But boy, he has so little to no tolerance for a lot of the nonsense. Yeah, it was Wigglesworth. Yeah, so the Robert Vance and Sean were saying Wigglesworth. Well, I think the reason I'm getting so easily irritated is because I'm starting to get sleepy. So that's why I'm starting to go off and
we gotta wrap this thing up for you.
I'm getting a little in my flesh over all this. That's all. That's all somebody's gonna do is just put reckless love in the comments, and you're just gonna watch me explode. I'm just gonna blow blow right up. Oh, that's funny. Frankie Lee says Calvinists have tens of thousands of dumb theologians. No match against our guys. Well, I mean, come on, brother. Let me tell you, I don't think there's one Calvinist theologian that has stinking Street Fighter videos of them knocking people down. So I'll say we have plenty of foolishness that happens on our side. Peace, brother Sean.
Although I will say this, when things start going bump in the night and your dining room table is, flipped upside down without anybody touching it, and the lights are flicking on and off, nobody's calling the Calvinist preacher.
Nope, they're calling the Catholics because they actually have exorcists. No, that's actually funny. If you've watched some of these videos that Michael Knowles did in the last year interviewing, he had this streak where he started getting into talking about the Nephilim and talking about the supernatural. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's almost like he's a Christian. I'm sorry. I love Michael Knowles, but I was just trying to be, once again, I'm getting sleepy. But one of the exorcists that he interviewed literally said that he has to go sometimes 3 to 5 hours away because people will call churches desperate in their area, and none of them, like, they'll just hang up on them. They literally will be like, either go see a therapist, go see a psychiatrist, or they'll just be like, listen, my kid is floating and talking in 4 different languages in different voices. Click. And let's be honest. It ain't just every old Pentecostal charismatic church that would have the stones to deal with that. Most people are filled with fear because they don't face it because they're inexperienced with facing this stuff.
Yeah.
There was a congregation that I was not there when this happened, but they were having a prayer meeting and somebody manifested. And what did they do? They didn't pray. They called the police. In the church, somebody manifested in a prayer meeting on like a women's Bible study or something. Somebody manifested. Instead of casting that devil out, they called the police. How inept. I mean, like, come on, man. That's like being a hot dog in a hot dog eating contest, and you get thrown in the trash because nobody's going to eat you. That's how, I mean, like, like we're useless. I mean, like, what would Jesus say to us? I mean, like, he looked at the disciples because they couldn't, like, they were casting out devils, but couldn't cast out this particular devil. And he's like, oh, ye of little faith. What in the world is wrong with you guys? You see me calm the storm. You see me doing all this stuff, and you still have no faith. We have not seen yet believe, but we won't believe to cast out, to do what's in the Great Commission. Unless you're one of those people that believe those last few verses of Mark aren't, they're not legitimate. And in which case, then we'll just go read a book on theology. Oh my gosh, there's somebody manifesting. Well, go read a book on theology because, I mean, here's the question I'd love to ask John MacArthur. And maybe we'll end here because now I'm ranting. Here's the question I want to ask John MacArthur. If all these mental conditions don't exist, if all this psychopathy and all this, if that is not happening and it's not demonic, then what is it? It's got to be one or the other. It's either got to be something physically wrong with somebody's brain or body, or it's got to be the demonic. And the thing is, you have people in the church, they blame it all on one or the other. And nobody wants to have balance, which is funny because the Catholics actually do. They'll do a full thing to make sure there's nothing wrong with you physically. And then they're like, well, okay, we've ruled everything out. You're demon possessed. And we're going to knock this thing out of you. They're actually the only ones that are like being balanced. Well, one of the few. I'm not going to, say the only ones, but as far as a standard operating procedure, or they say SOP in the military. Y'all, what do y'all think?
In that same diatribe where he was talking about PTSD is actually just grief. You're in the war, your buddy dies. You don't actually have a physical condition. You just experiencing grief and survivor's guilt or whatever. But you don't have nightmares, no and wake up in a cold sweat from grief. You don't freak out during a thunderstorm when you hear thunder outside because it reminds you of shells going off in wartime. That's not grief. That is a physiological condition that's a result of a trauma that you experience. And it's not just war, but it's known. It's shell shocked is, one of the consequences.
That's what they called it before PTSD.
Right. But anyway, during that same diatribe, he was talking about how, we have to look at these things as just natural events. It's there's no such thing as a PTSD. There's no such thing as AD. What is it? ADD, attention deficit disorder. It's just an excuse to give people drugs and keep them drugged up. To a certain extent, he's right. There are abuses in the pharmaceutical industry. They've come up with stuff for years that's, this is a sickness and we can treat it. Just ask your doctor about this or that. But MacArthur, I think he had a valid point on some of these things, but boy, he made a lot of people mad.
Yeah,
and these are not charismatics. These are reformed people who usually agree with John MacArthur, and they said, "You say that there's no such thing as mental illness. Tell that to my uncle, who was in Vietnam." It's again, it's something you want to be balanced on, because you don't want to just automatically give somebody drugs every time they, have some sort of anxiety.
Yeah.
And that's the problem that we have is as soon as somebody has a problem, we want to shoot them full of drugs. Well, that's wrong, but it's also wrong to say that there is no such thing as
there's nothing wrong with you.
Obsessive compulsive disorder was one I think that he mentioned. There's no such thing as OCD or attention deficit disorder or post-traumatic stress disorder. These are just excuses to no, there is such a thing, but there is also a lot of extremism in the psychological or the pharmaceutical world. I remember one time years ago, they came up with this thing called social anxiety disorder. You ever heard of social anxiety disorder?
Oh, yeah.
It just basically means you're shy. And they said, we've got this condition, this new condition that we've discovered called social anxiety disorder. We got a drug. I thought that was called booze. You're
such a Baptist.
We've known about booze for years. You're a little bit shy. Just drink a little vodka or Coke.
Yeah, you're afraid to preach here, brother. Have a sip of this. It'll give you some courage, liquid courage.
But it gets ridiculous. Everything's a sickness, everything's a disease, and we got a drug to treat everything. So there's some merit to what MacArthur said, but again, when he comes right out and says it's all grief, there's no such thing as PTSD, and Costy Hinn is sitting right next to him doing
looking very uncomfortable.
He's probably thinking, man, this is almost as bad as when I was with my uncle.
Yeah.
Ian, did you have anything you wanted to throw on that?
I'll just comment on this from Flame of the Spirit. How does the word of faith move and approach mental illness in general? That's going to vary between church to church, camp to camp. I'll just speak for what I'm familiar with here. Pastor Kenneth Hagin Jr., his famous saying, "The natural and the supernatural come together to make the explosive force for God." That's pretty much the take that Rhema has. Like, if you're depressed, go to therapy, but mix faith with it, right? Remind yourself who you are in Christ. Remind yourself that, all these biblical truths right? Stay in the word, stay in prayer, but also do what you need to do physically. I mean, if you get a cancer diagnosis, I mean, go seek treatment, right? So if you get a diagnosis of PTSD or some other mental ill, you know, don't ignore that. Like, treat it, but mix faith with it.
That's balance, brother. That's if you guys want to go to Soul Vitamins, the podcast that I do with my partner, brother Jonathan Rushing, he actually suffers with anxiety. He has severe issues with anxiety. I never knew it in the 20 plus years I've known him. And he preached a heck of a sermon, and it was funny. We had a storm when it was happening. So it's cut up into two parts because I was able to keep on recording, but we lost internet. And he shares his own personal testimony and, how he's walked that journey of medication and faith. Because, man, he's a man of faith. He's 120,000% Pentecostal, filled with the Spirit, with the evidence, and seeing miracles, and laid his hands on people. And so he had a tremendous testimony, and just a balanced, my goodness, can we please have balance and say, hey, look, man, I'm gonna pray for you and believe with you. And while I'm praying for you and believing with you, go to the doctor. Unless the Lord himself shows up with a fiery angel, says, don't go to the doctor, go to the doctor and have some common sense, man. Please.
Didn't Charles Spurgeon suffer from depression?
Was it Spurgeon?
I think I heard that. Maybe it wasn't Spurgeon. Maybe I'm getting him.
I thought it was maybe Wilkerson. Didn't Wilkerson, you say in your video about him?
David Wilkerson? Yeah, he went through what do you call peaks and valleys. He was probably a little bit on the
bipolar, possibly on the scale.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to use the word bipolar, but he did have a lot of highs and lows emotionally. But I thought I read that Charles Spurgeon.
You're right, Rod. There's an article from Christianity Today back in 2021 talking about Charles Spurgeon and his depression. So you're right.
Yeah. I had anxiety attacks when I was young, and it ain't fun, and it's a real thing. I mean, your mind is racing. You can't shut your brain off. Your heart starts pounding, and you're breathing rapidly, and you think you're having a heart attack. I mean, It is a physiological thing. It's not just being sad and being depressed and grief. It is a physiological thing. And you're wondering, why can't I shut my brain off? Why is my heart pounding like this? Why am I out of breath? And I haven't been doing anything. It kicks in, and you just can't stop it. And that happened to me a lot in my 20s. But I somehow or another, it stopped when I got in my 30s. And it wasn't like, oh, I stand against it, or anything like that. It was just
laid out in a service and somebody speak to it and pray over it and knock it out of your body.
Nothing like that. I think what happened was, as I got older, I just realized that nothing is as important as I thought it was. And I just learned, I've been through that experience before. It's no big deal. When I was young, I didn't have a whole lot of life experience, and I just, if I was a woman, that people would have said I was a drama queen. But I don't know what happens when you're a guy and you blow everything out of proportion. But that's the way I was when I was young, and it just took me time and experience in life to get to the point where I just say, okay, so I didn't get that job, or so. That relationship didn't work out, or whatever. And, it's not the end of the world. But some people never grow out of it. And they struggle with it their whole life. But it is a physiological thing. It's not just being depressed. You do start to wonder, what is happening to my body?
Yeah. The only time I ever dealt with it was when I was going through chemotherapy. And I can't imagine having to deal with that on a regular basis, because it was specific. It's been hard for me to be sympathetic. But like when Jonathan was talking about it, a few months ago when we did that episode, it made me think back of when I would have that, and I was like, oh yeah, you've been there. You should probably be a little bit more understanding and have a little bit more grace, and because but it was harder yet also easier for me because it was just about chemo. So once the Lord healed me of cancer, it's like, well, okay, well, there we go, and issue gone. But I did have a couple pastors that I work for that got me close to that place where I didn't want to be in the same room with them because they just would get me on pins and needles, and I felt like I could do nothing right. So I was like, yeah, okay, I get it to an extent, so yeah, some of that stuff you got to pray through. Some of that stuff, see a doctor, talk to a friend, wise counsel. What a low point to end the stream on. Now I kind of wish I had some of that booze that Rob was talking about.
Social anxiety disorder medication. Consult your doctor today.
Take some wine for your stomach, young Timothy, and also for your social anxiety disorder.
You better mix it with 14 barrels of water, son, because that wine wasn't as strong and it wasn't. Oh my gosh! There's 14 different things for wine. Could it be everything from the vine to the fermented stuff? And okay, have some grape juice, Michael Jackson. Well, I don't know if you have any closing thoughts, but we still got about 30 here strong with us, and we appreciate
shout out to the chat.
Shout out to. I tell you what, Larry V, man. I mean, like, I feel like we're about best friends now because about everything he's saying, I'm like, yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that.
I like how we were all like, is Larry V, man, like a troll at the beginning, and now here at the end of it, we're like, this guy's awesome.
Yeah, he's like, I want to, like, hey man, let's go out for a non-alcoholic beer.
Well, when I used to frequent the Remnant Radio live streams, I would see Larry V. Man in there.
Really?
And yeah. And I don't know. I don't know if he's a cessationist or what, but he always seemed to be against the gifts or whatever. Maybe I haven't. I mean, I'm one of these people who I don't like to get into too many. I mean, you would never know this about me, but I don't like to get into a lot of confrontations and arguments.
Yeah.
And so I never really followed up on it. So I don't know if he's a cessationist or if he's just anti-word of faith, because the Remnant Radio guys are not cessationists, but they are anti-word of faith. I didn't know that for the longest time. It took a while for that to all come out. So,
gotcha.
I don't know if you're Larry V. Man. I don't know if you're.
He said he's not. He said he's not a cessationist.
He's not a cessationist. Okay, so he says
he's a talker.
Okay.
He just doesn't tolerate people being false and fake, and brother, neither do we.
Okay.
So I like the person in the comments and I said, like, it took me 30 years before I could say something nice about Benny Hinn. Or something like that. That cracked me up. That cracked me up, man. Oh my goodness. But see, I mean, yeah, we're brothers. I tell you, this is the beautiful thing. One of the things I'm looking, to end it on a positive note. I'm sitting here like reading the comments, and I'm looking at you, Ian, because I can tell when you're going through them, because you find something interesting or you chuckle to yourself. Like this is what eternity in heaven's gonna be. Telling all these stories, telling the victories, talking about the foolish mistakes that we all made, So, joking with John MacArthur, but like, well, you took an L there, brother, but then also talking about the victories and sharing the testimonies of the things that the Lord brought us through. It's going to be a wonderful time. And I pray and I desire for us to have more of that on this side of eternity, because we need each other so badly.
Amen.
We need each other. And I'm tired of the fussing and fighting. And what's the Bishop Mari Emmanuel, the guy that was stabbed
in Australia,
the Orthodox preacher. He spoke about that the other a week or two before he was attacked. He said, we need to end the Christian brother wars. And the only other time I've ever heard that in my life was just what's that movie with Ben Affleck and Matt Damon? Good Will Hunting. There's this Boston YouTube Instagram guy. I saw this video of him talking about the First Crusades, and it's this account from a French monk, friar, that was a part of the First Crusades, and talks about the testimonies of the things the Lord did, which I'd love to. I got to find somebody. If either of you guys are like deep into the Crusades, I'd love to have a thing talking about that. And if you know somebody that's deep into that history, because the testimonies this guy shared, but one of the first things that they did was the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church ended the Christian Brother Wars, and they unified to have the First Crusade, because they realized that they were going to be, I mean, they were the Islam was going to push them into extinction. And all that, and those victories and miracles, happened after they ended the Christian Brother Wars. It's the only other time I've ever heard that term used. And then Mari Emanuel says we need to end the Christian Brother Wars, and I was like, oh wow, it's about time for a holy crusade, and not one of violence, not a physical crusade. We need a spiritual crusade, but I don't think it's going to happen like we keep on saying and prophesying and preaching that, this last revival, revival's going to come, revival's going to come. It ain't going to come with us being divided like we are. I don't think. I really don't think. Yeah. I mean, when we spend so much of our time just at each other's throats and calling each other, you're a heretic, you're a heretic, you're an apostate, you're a towel. It's ridiculous. So we got to end this nonsense and learn to laugh at ourselves, admit when we mess up, and love each other, and see and tell our brothers when, yeah, God is sovereign. Church of God pastor I served under, he told me when I was serving at the Presbyterian Church, he said, Gabriel, I got my doctorate at a Presbyterian school of theology, and we in the Church of God do not preach enough about the sovereignty of God. We think it's all on us, and we worry and we shake as if God is not in control. Argue with that. How you like them apples?
I believe in the sovereignty of God. I just don't believe in it the way some people do.
Well, yeah, some people, hey, they just sit at home and like, hey, God's sovereign, he'll take care of it.
I don't believe when you're playing Scrabble with your wife that God sovereignly chooses which letters you get. And that's what John Piper said that.
Oh no, he didn't choose. 9/11. He chose before the foundations of the universe. He chose what you were going to play in that Scrabble. So, but that was my closing thought. You go, Ian, and then we'll let Rod have his closing thought.
Yeah, Larry V said he's not pre-trib. I'm not pre-trib either, and I drive all of my dispensational premillennial pre-trib friends crazy.
Hey, that's beautiful. We have 3 different views here. Rod is pan-trib, you're some other trib, and I'm 100% pre-trib. And yet, here we are.
Here we are. Yeah, no, I agree with you. Everything you said. We need to come together. We have Islam coming from one direction, and we have wokeness coming from the other. These are twin religions, if you ask me. And
Marxism.
Yes. And then here we have Christianity in the middle being attacked on all sides, and yet we can't realize that the hordes of Mordor are gathering and the fellowship is in disarray.
Come on.
So we need to come together and find common ground, because we have a common enemy. And without that, I mean, what hope do we have without unity? So
I love it.
I don't really have any closing thoughts. Just as events unfold between Mike Winger and Benny Hinn and everything, I just try to keep everything in context. there's two sides to every story, and that doesn't mean that I'm a Benny Hinn fan. And
wait, you got to say that in the voice, Rod. Come on now.
What's that?
I'm not the Benny Hinn fan, brother.
Brother. I think it's very important that, I say this over and over and over, but I'm going to keep on saying it. Jesus said, don't judge by outward appearances, but judge with righteous judgment. In other words, judging by outward appearances is unrighteous judgment. Go beyond the surface level, get the facts. Don't just assume because some guy puts a video out saying this or that. Don't just assume that their research is accurate and that they're giving you factual information. Use what they say as a launching pad for your own research and your own fact finding. My opinion of Benny Hinn is based on 35 years of experience interacting with people who know him, reading books on him, watching him, see the things that he does. And I formed my conclusions after a long period of time, and I'm still open to correction if I'm wrong about something. I found out something about him just the other day that I didn't know. Gabriel and I were talking with a guy, and I found out that he had been on staff at a church. That church Calvary Assembly that I went to, Benny was on staff. I didn't know that. And that's going to have every piece of information that you can gather and put that into your brain. It's just like putting money in the bank. And then when you need it, it's there. Get information, do a little research, do a little digging beyond the surface level, so that when you form an opinion, it's based on actual information and not opinions. Because people get things wrong. Sometimes they lie. Sometimes they're just saying stuff to get views. It's like the Apostle Paul said, let God be true and every man a liar. You just have to assume a lot of times that most of the information you're getting is wrong. And so you need to dig a little bit and find out what the truth is.
Be a Berean. That's what I loved about when Chuck Missler taught. He would say, don't believe anything I say. Go and look for the word. Go and look in the word. He said, if you take what I say at face value, you flunk. You fail the course. So that's it. Walk in mercy, walk in grace. And I tell you, I'll leave you this quote. It's one of my favorite quotes from a guy who actually did write some pretty good fiction, but if you take it as gospel, it's definitely heresy. Good old Dan Brown, good old Da Vinci Code Dan Brown. But it's a great quote. It's from the new Carmelango, who's one of the archbishops in Angels and Demons. Yeah. See, Larry V, man, Missler was great. See, I'm telling you, man, we're friends. We're like, the three amigos at the end of the movie. They're friends,
So just so everybody knows, Gabriel has the controls. So all of those comments that say Jew and Greek, he's typing those. I'm not typing.
Oh, yeah, it ain't Rod. So if he had a problem with something Jew and Greek said, it was me. It was me. And I said that earlier, but, it's been 2 hours and about 200 comments ago. But here's the quote, and then I promise we're going to end it because, this is – but when you're having good conversations with brothers and you got people in the comments, it's a beautiful time. It's fellowship. It's like a good church service. You don't want to leave. So it's after all this drama happens and all these accusations and all these things and people die. Kind of sounds like today, right? And Tom Hanks's character, who's kind of agnostic, wants this ancient book from the Catholic Church, and he wasn't going to get it, and they give it to him right there. Thank God for Mike Winger. Thank God for Mike Winger who brought us together tonight. Good call, Kevin Evans. So he goes to give him this book, and he knows he's going to use it as ammunition to write against the Catholic Church. And he said, I know you're going to give this, just make sure that he's like, hey, you can have this book until you die. Just make sure in your will and testament, it makes its way back home. That's incredible, number one. But what he says, when I first saw the film, I was about in tears. This is how hard it struck me. And I didn't hear anything else from the movie. And I sat there in silent thought for 15 minutes afterwards. I wish every sermon was this poignant. He says, all men are flawed. Even this one. He says religion is flawed because man is flawed. Even this one. So when you write about God's church, and you will write about his church, do so gently. And the whole time in the film, you think this guy's the villain. And he's always telling people, he's telling them to go arrest a guy. Do so gently. Do so gently. We are all flawed, but can we be gentle and peaceful and loving and gracious with each other? Confront. Be truthful, be honest. Let's not be afraid. God has not given us a spirit of fear. We need to confront sin. We don't have to be Westboro jerks about it. We don't have to have signs that say God hates you and you're going to hell. We're trying to save people, not condemn them, right? Those are two different approaches to the same issue. So, brothers and sisters, be gentle because you're flawed and so are we. So, we pray we didn't offend you. I pray I didn't offend y'all with my harshness tonight. Talk about modern worship. I'm taking my own medicine, but we love you guys. Thanks for Rod to hanging with us. Ian, give a shout out to your channel one more time for your podcast.
You can find the Bible Schooled podcast on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, Google Play Store, Audible, anywhere you like to listen to podcasts. Check it out. I just did one on yesterday about the ascension, talking about why the ascension of Christ matters more than you think it does. And next week, in honor of Pentecost Sunday coming up, new episode about should Christians speak in tongues? Can every Christian even do it?
Oh, that's going to be good.
Yeah, we're talking about that next week. So check it out.
So do me this favor, Ian. Send that in our private chat because you won't be able to post the link. Send it to me in the private chat so I can add it to the description of the video. And of course, my name's Gabriel Bello. I have music. So somebody in there said that they don't really like modern Christian music. They like jazz and that type of music. Well, that's why I'm here, because that's what I make. I'm a #1 smooth jazz Billboard artist. I've been serving in music ministry for 30 plus years, full time for over 20 years. I love the Lord, heal the cancer. My channel is Gabriel Bello Music, GabrielBelloMusic.com. I've got 6 or 7 records everywhere music is streamed. I also do a podcast with my brother Jonathan Rushing. That's the Soul Vitamins podcast. I will add those to the description. And of course, we're here at the grace of our brother Jew and Greek Rod Saunders, who's killing it out here doing the charismatic apologist, one of like 3 on the YouTube. So praise the Lord for his ministry, and may he quickly reach 100,000 subs so that he can fund and get some help, because he's a one-man show, as both of us are, the 3 of us. So that's where we're trying to team up and help each other in our ministries as we share the gospel with all of our unique gifts.
Amen.
So
we're trying to be the charismatic content creator Avengers.
Yeah.
The 3 amigos.
Yeah.
One for each other and all for one. But yeah, we'll have to try to make this a regular thing, guys, because I quite enjoyed this.
This was good.
So all right, y'all. Fresh spirit of prayer and supplication. Let's just put these last 2 comments up here. Yes, how much God loves all the Christians. We're all his children. We're all his body. So God bless Larry V. Man, my brother Chris Capps, Kevin Evans, and Sean earlier who left out here. So yeah, he's going to do a response. That was what the whole thing tonight was about, Kevin. He came a little late, so go back and watch this whole thing. And Rod, I think, is going to do a video specifically addressing that, but he did a lot of that tonight. So stay tuned. And if you haven't put your notifications on for Rod's channel, hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next live stream. So y'all take care. Peace out. Many blessings. Jesus loves you, and so do we.